I learned yesterday that Kevin Samuelson passed away, and it took me by surprise because of the fact I believe it was just day before yesterday that I had mentioned him, and I don't even watch him. I never mention him. Um, and like the next day he passed away. And if you're unfamiliar, and I'm really unfamiliar because I didn't watch him. But I heard, through the grapevine that he was, I wouldn't necessarily label him a shock jock, but he specifically, his his rhetoric was anti-black women. But the reason why, and I know that some people may have been critical of what I had to say when I said, it's his amendment right to say whatever it is he wants and to feel however he wants. And that was really what I started the conversation with a couple days ago when I mentioned him. I said, he said something about women over 35 who are unmarried are leftovers, and men must think that there's something, men know that there's likely something wrong with them. And I said, God bless him. I said, that's his opinion and he's entitled to that. And made a living off of his opinion. What was more baffling to me than what he did would be the women who were calling in or to get a value assignment. You're calling in to get your value assigned to you. That to me is a little bit more problematic than somebody who's basically riding to the bank by being witty and condescending and belittling. You calling in to who is this man? And you gave that man this power, and he rode it to the bank. He took your energy. Some may call him an energy vampire. Some may say, he was wise or intelligent to be able to leverage his opinion and make a decent, living off of it. Some may call him an energy vampire because he fed off of your rage, and he used your rage to be able to propel him to the position that he desired. But bottom line is, it's his mouth, it's his mind, it was his opinion. Anyways, he passed away yesterday. May he rest in peace. But what I wanted to talk about was the fact that he passed away from a cardiac arrest. And what I began to understand when I was began to get more knowledge, not just about Western medicine, but about the study of physicians of the West, but metaphysics. And I began to understand that every ailment, every sickness dealt with, it was a mental defect or something that was more spiritually rooted and mentally rooted, that we have the power to actually create our own ailments, to create our disease. And that every ailment, there was an underlining manifestation of an ailment of the mind, a sickness of the mind. And as much as I don't like to say this, because I felt as if it was ruthless, the response that they got when Twitter and all the social media, it was ruthless. The response that a lot of black women had, like almost celebrating the man's death. That's how vilified he was. Um, and I'm like, man, people hate people just by their opinion. But in a certain sense, we are beyond our physical bodies. And so what we bring to the world is kind of more significant, what our message is. And if they look at your message as poisonous, then they look at it as something that can be eradicated, that you should be eradicated because you're not being constructive to the world. So a lot of people celebrated the man's death. I thought that was a little ruthless. But what I will say is that I know this is going to sound bad, what I'm about to say. I didn't celebrate the man's death, but what I will say is I had a moment, I had to pause for a second. And his death was affirming and reassuring. And I had to just take like 5-10 minutes to just kind of meditate. And it made me begin to really understand, but not understand from a standpoint of maybe that the metaphysicians' philosophy and theory is maybe accurate. I said, oh, this is what Tahuti Mahatra was talking about. He's very wise. It was like such an epiphany that I was taken aback. It was almost, I almost got emotional, not over his death, but over the revelation. Because he died from a cardiac arrest, a disease of the heart. All the hatred that he spewed with the intention of hurting women, of hurting specifically black women. That was his intention. To hurt black women, to hurt black women's self-esteem, to degenerate black women, to condescend black women, to hurt us, to hurt our hearts, to break our hearts, to wound us, to implant ideas in us that would make us feel bad about ourselves. And when we talk about dharma and we talk about karma, he did it all the way to the bank. He used your rage. He used triggering you. He used breaking your heart, hurting you. He used condescending you, making you feel low as a means to make him rise. And I just talked about the conversation of sustainability. Is your vocation sustainable? This was proof. So I don't get angry at the hatred because the hatred is profound. I don't know why hatred is at an all-time high. Maybe it's my awareness that's at an all-time high. I've never witnessed hatred in our society at this level. Just absolute hatred. And we can get pulled into that hatred, but Kevin Samuelson's death was a display that you only hurt yourself when you are wicked and you have a black heart. The man died of a heart disease, a cardiac arrest, an illness of the heart. And when people say you're ruthless, you're heartless, you have no compassion, in the Western society, people look at it as a good thing. But guess what? Heart disease is the number one cause of death. The number one cause of death is the disease of the heart. So from a metaphysical standpoint, the individuals who lack compassion, and they think it's cool to be so cruel and so mean-spirited and so compassionless and no empathy and no kindness and so heartless. But the only thing they're doing is giving themselves a disease of the heart. All that hatred, in order for you to spew hatred at somebody else, that hatred has to reside within. So I'm analyzing things, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna touch on these things. I had something I wanted to talk about yesterday, but I said, you know what? To even talk about it, I feel like it's like almost a slap in the face to Allah, because there's just so much to be grateful for. I'm like, I really don't even want to give this time because there's just so much to be grateful for. Allah's love is so overwhelming. There's so much to be grateful for. But with love, hopefully comes compassion. And when we talk about love, we talk about the heart. The heart wants what it wants. The heart trumps the mind. You follow your heart. Sometimes you just know that your heart is just open to somebody and you can't even explain why. And it may not make sense on paper, but it's the heart. It's the heart. And when we talked about the scale of ma'at is you rise when your heart is lighter than a feather. The compassion that we seek from Allah is the compassion that we have to give to mankind. So you want Allah to forgive you, you want Allah's mercy, but you're so rigid when it comes to your judgment over other people. How does that work? And you think that you're being cute by trying to get in the way of people's destiny and trying to block people and trying to be mean-spirited, but you're only getting in your own way. Because what Allah might do is Allah is going to say, well, why should I extend any compassion or mercy to you? You want me to understand the circumstance, based on the decisions that you made, but you were not willing to give that same understanding or compassion to another human being. And Allah is so merciful. Allah understands everything. He knows everything. He knows all the circumstances. So He may be blessing one person over another for their deen, because one person may be in an environment that's all about the deen and has help and has all of these things going on and support, and the other person may be all alone, but holding on to that deen. And Allah's looking at that loner like, wow. And the odds were stacked up against you, and you had this many enemies, and these many agents of Shaitan were trying to attack you. And you still were able to endure your test, your trial, and you were still able to conquer these things. And a lot of times we think of what we're overcoming as something more abstract, but it's really quite simple. It's love versus hatred. When you are bombarded with hatred, that will be your test. That will be your test. When you are spewed hatred, your test will be, are you still able to love? Are you going to let their hatred contaminate your heart? And when we say that Allah loves us, Allah really loves us. Because what is described, what is instructed, is rules for self-preservation. Even if something happens, don't let it hurt your heart. Don't let it go. Forgive. I think that when we have less faith in God, we have to hold on to these things. And it's like, you don't have to hold on to these things. I mean, I'm aware of certain things that really literally would break anyone's heart. When you find out about certain people that have backstabbed you and the things that they've done and the things that they've said and all these things, it could break your heart. It could leave a fracture in your heart. But that would only be hurting you. So Allah is asking you, don't let it hurt your heart because it only hurts you. I am the omnipotent, omnipresent. I am the all-knowing, all-seeing. I am the most powerful. Certainly, their hatred will backfire on them. They are only hurting themselves by doing hateful acts. They're unaware. They're trying to hurt you. They're hurting themselves. The man died from a cardiac arrest. Mid-50s, that's young. Because of all the hatred, all the heartbreak that he gave to people, he ended up breaking his own heart and died because of a disease of the heart. All of the energy that he put out into the world backfired on him. Everybody was laughing. You're so heartless. You're so ruthless. Guys bonding over heartlessness. Men bonding over cruelty, over all these things. And then dropping dead over a disease of the heart. Do you think that this is coincidental? Every ailment, every physical ailment manifests itself because of a spiritual or mental ailment. This was a display of that. You want to be heartless, so there goes your heart. Bow. Your heart is done. Because you want to be heartless. What is your intention? Trying to block someone else from having love or block someone else from having success, it doesn't get you any closer to having love or any closer to having success. What was your intention in doing these things? What is your intention? And I can't emphasize more that everything that you put out into the world is what you will receive. Is what you will receive. So, love, you can't block love. You can't block someone from having love. As much as people, and it's, my goodness. It's been an interesting experience. I really wanted to talk about it yesterday, but I'm not going to talk about it because I'd rather just be praising Allah and talking about all the gifts that I've been given and really more wired and focused on appreciation and focused on love, because that's an option. You could focus on hatred or you could focus on love. So I'd rather just focus on love. But I was thinking, it was on my heart yesterday, and I was just thinking, like, man, there's just so many ways to handle circumstance. And because of my father, who had the biggest heart of any man, any person I've ever met, just the love in his heart was overwhelming and profound. And he cried easily because of his overwhelming compassion. I remember he cried at, I believe, Free Willy. He was crying. And then I was in middle school or elementary school, and we went to the movie theater to go see Harriet the Spy. And he got choked up at the movie. When Harriet was getting bullied, he got choked up. He started having some tears at Harriet the Spy. And I just would think how his heart would get touched so easily at the human condition and situations, circumstances, and stories that he could relate to. And how beautiful that was, a man to be able to cry. It's so beautiful because it shows that his heart is open, that he still feels. And that's so beautiful because when we talk about attraction and we talk about love, when you listen to a man, like a Kevin Samuelson, and there's a couple of men that I can think of that have his energy, that apply no compassion whatsoever. And they go about life in a very cold and shrewd manner. And they make very cold and shrewd and compassionless and empathetic lack of empathy decisions. And how in our culture it's like conducive. Like that they call you a boss for your lack of compassion, for your ruthlessness, for your ability to make cold decisions and be mean and cruel and not take into consideration people's circumstances and things. For in our society, that's considered a boss. But when you reach a higher understanding and you go into a more spiritual level, you realize that that's not a boss. That's not a boss. Allah is the boss. When you close your heart off, that Allah lives in your heart. So the less compassion and the more heartlessness, the less godliness. And our society has really made this coldness, a thing. Coldness, shrewdness, and people associate that with being a boss. And it's led to our societal demise. Because I just don't believe it. I don't believe it. And why don't I believe it? Because of this drug culture. You're not heartless, you're high. You're not heartless, you're an addict, you're a drug addict. That's what you are. Because if you're heartless, prove it to me. Don't drink, don't smoke, don't pop pills, don't do drugs. Because you get high and then you are numb to the hatred that you spew. But you're high, so you can't feel. If someone is shrewd and heartless and they don't do any drugs or drink or do anything, then you really are heartless. But you're drunk because you want to escape. But then you want to be heartless at the same time? Because you don't want to feel, but you're killing yourself. You're putting poison inside of your body by drugging and by drinking. So that is a display of how everything ricochets back to you. You're being heartless, you're being compassionless, but now you got an addiction and you're literally killing yourself. Your hatred, your own hatred that you spew out to the world is forcing you to hate yourself. And you hate yourself by the unconscious act of putting things in your body that are contaminating your body. And it is a perpetual cycle of you trying to numb your emotions and your emotional pain in order to cope with the hatred that you spew. It's nonsensical to a woman like myself. You're contaminating yourself, you're drugging yourself because of the hatred that you received somewhere along the line, and the lack of compassion and the heartlessness that you attracted. But you're, instead of saying, you know what, because I had to deal with so many heartless people and so many cruel people, I'm going to be kind. That wasn't the takeaway. You said, I'm just going to spew more hatred, but kill myself simultaneously. Well, I mean, hey, everything has its, consequences. You're killing yourself because you don't want to be here subconsciously, because of the hatred that resides in you, because of the hatred that you give. And so I was just, in my feelings a little bit yesterday, because I was like, man, like there's a lot of ways to handle the situation. It's just, crazy to me. But I'm not on my woe is me, but it's like I know that I could talk to my dad about this, and my dad would understand my perspective and apply sensitivity to the situation. I came home 2.5 years ago to an empty place, and I had to deal with my father's death in solitude. And I was out and about, I was socializing at the time. I'm a little bit more antisocial now, but it was unbearable. I was crying at bars. A woman literally had to tell me, Kenza, go home. 'Cause I just broke down, weeping. And there was no one that was there for me. I had my child. The only people that were in the hospital room were the nurse, the doctor, and my mother. My child's entire life, he received a pair of socks, some booties, and a scully from his father. My son hasn't seen his father since he was 3 years old. Not a dollar, not a dime, not a birthday card, not a phone call. I worked 14-hour days. I would go home limping, 4 o'clock in the morning. $10 maybe you profit some days after paying the babysitter. My son was sleeping on a babysitter's couch for me to be able to work. For years. Waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Had to bring my son to the babysitter 4 o'clock in the morning. Still dark outside. He's sleeping on a cot at the babysitter's house for me to be to work 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning. I'm tired. Got buckets of ice, filling up bars, buckets and buckets of ice. On my feet, doubles. 12-hour days, 14-hour days. For years. To put food on the table for my son, to provide for my child. For years, this was my life. For years, just me. No help. No child support ever a day in my son's life. He got sick, I had to leave work. You know how many jobs I lost? The boss won't let you go on time. You're looking at the clock. It's $2 a minute. Every minute you're late to pick up your child. People think it's sweet now. My son's 15. He's about to be in college in a couple years. He's about to have his driver's license. Try when they're young. Being judged, being looked at, being humiliated by social services. attracting people who look at your circumstance and your poverty and try to pimp you. And you're over there trying to earn a decent living, your feet hurting, you're limping after a 13, 14-hour day, don't know how you're going to pay the babysitter, and you got some perverted men trying to pimp you and exploit your situation, talking about, yeah, she's a hard worker, don't make her a manager. I'd rather make her a whore. Kevin Samuelsons of the world, Quince Brinkleys of the world, Thomas Harts of the world, who prey on single mothers. Nah, don't wife her. I'd rather make her a whore. Joe Bidens of the world. And you're alone and you don't have anybody by your side and you got to teach your kid and you don't even know, and your kid has no father to teach him how to be a man. And you're working and you're working and you're working and you're punching the clock to very oppressive people. And your paycheck is late, like where? And then you're looking at the hours, like time out. I put in 55 hours, 60 hours this week. Why is my paycheck looking so small? No child support, nobody by your side. You got to struggle to figure out how to buy a car. You got to struggle to figure out, you know how many mornings we had to wake up? I was taking him to school on the bus, ice cold, my son's nose running as a child. You know the type of shit that I've been through? I've been through things that you cowards could never fathom enduring. Nobody by your side. No one to help you out. Alone, all the time, trying to raise a kid. Do you know what I've been through? Abuse, mistreatment, abuse, kicked down. Do you know what I've been through? I ask Allah to continue to allow me to be able to persevere. But my perspective is those who are so critical but have never offered any help. The audacity with all the adversity. I was always writing. I always had my notebook. I was always writing songs. I was always doing my music. There were times that I couldn't do my music as much. I was working 50-hour weeks, 60-hour weeks. I was putting in time at the job. But I was always doing my music. I was always doing my music. Not 1 hour of studio time did you help me get. Not one vocal coach did you help me get. Every dance class I went to, I paid for it out of my pocket from putting in those hours. Every single dance class that I attended, I paid for out of my pocket to cultivate my dance skills, to cultivate my craft. Every studio hour, I paid for it. The circumstances that allowed me to write these songs, the suffering, the oppression, and the pain, I experienced and I endured. You were never there to help me. You never believed in my dream. You never supported me. You put me down. You ridiculed me. You said this isn't for you. You condescended me. You laughed at me. You never supported me. You never supported my dream. When I started my own dance company, you didn't even show up to even support. I paid for the LLC. I got the business license. I paid the dance studio to be able to rent the time. I hired the instructor. I put my whole LLC, I put my whole dance company together. You didn't even show up. You didn't give me a dime to start my dance company. You didn't support. You didn't tell your coworkers, hey, pull up. My sister's starting a dance company. You didn't support my endeavor. You didn't support my interest. You shitted on it. You shitted on my dream. How dare you? You never paid for a lesson for me. You never paid for a vocal coach for me. You never paid for a dance lesson for me. You never paid for a guitar lesson for me. You never paid for a piano lesson for me. You never paid for a drum lesson for me. You never paid for me to go to school. You never got me a car. How dare you, after me doing it all by myself all these years, try to ridicule what I've cultivated for myself with that in your same hypocritical ass, and this goes on both sides. Women who have had husbands to invest in them, husbands to support them, husbands to pay for them to go to law school, husbands to pay for them to get vocal coaches, husbands to pay for them to get their feet done, their hair done, their nails done, husbands to pay for them to be able to go to dance classes, husbands paying for their choreography, paying people to write for them, paying for everything, paying for their image, paying for their boobs, paying for their butts, paying for their hair and nails and everything. Paying their bills. How dare you? You've never done anything I've done. How dare you try to force yourself into me respecting you when you've never done what I've done? You've never had to raise a kid on your own with no support, with no child support. Who the fuck do you think you are? Trying to buck at me, of course, clandestinely like the coward that you are. Because you've never endured what I've had to endure. And I take full accountability and full responsibility for the decision that I made. It was a tough lesson, indeed. But you don't see me 8 kids later replicating the same lesson 7 times, 8 times. Here she goes being another single mother. No, I learned my lesson the first time. And I've been pregnant 1 time. How dare you hypocritical abortionists who have killed your children talk about my parental fitness. When you murder your kid in its womb, you didn't even give it a fighting chance. You murderer. Hypocrites. Ridiculing, talking about me when I sang and things like that. Oh, she hits, but never once did you have compassion and say, yeah, you know what? Let me get her a vocal coach. I'm not asking you for anything outside of the fact that I've been consistent in saying, leave me alone. I don't want to hear your opinion about my music. I don't want to hear your opinion about my life. Just leave me alone because you didn't contribute to it. Which is fine at this point by me. Because you take the good with the bad, the strength required for me to live my dream, the no fucks given required for me to live my dream. Because it really has to be a no fucks given. You care when somebody invests in you. You care when someone sponsors you. Oh man, I don't want to let my investor down. I don't want to let my sponsor down. I don't want to let the people who invested in me down. So I gotta do it like this, or I gotta. I don't have those problems because nobody invested in me. No one supported me outside of Allah. So Allah is the only one that I answer to. It's actually a great place to be in because I owe you nothing. But that's so problematic to you that you want to insert yourself in my life even though you didn't give me fuck shit. No pay, no say. I don't think you understand that. That with your absence of support also comes your absence of a relationship and an absence of me giving a fuck about your opinion. I don't think you understand that. And this is not heartlessness. Genuinely, I wish you the best in the sense of the demons that reside in you, the jealousy, the hatred, the wickedness, the double-mindedness, the hypocrisy, the coldness, the shrewdness, all of these things that drive you to be the people that you are. I pray they go away and that you actually become a better person, a better human being. But what I will do is I will use this mouth to turn you off so much, to piss you off so much that you stay from the fuck around me. I will be as profane as possible to offend you to the point where you're so put off by me that you stay from the fuck around me. I am better off without you. I am better than I've been without you, please. You've done nothing for me but try to ridicule me, set me up, sabotage me, pimp me, exploit me, take advantage of a situation. You are a predator. I want nothing to do with you. And understand and know that the hatred that resides within, the harshness, the cruelty, the cold-heartedness, you women are over here thinking like, I mean, just the very fact that you're so gung-ho about Kinza not wearing all white and Kinza not getting married and all of these things, you think if you really had love in your life that would even be your energy? If you were really in love, if you really had love in your life, that would not even be your energy. If you were really satisfied with your life and you were really satisfied with your partner, you wouldn't care about somebody else having love in their lives. You think that I covet a relationship with you? And that was his main thing, Kevin Samuelson, talking about these corporate men, these high-value men, these millionaire men, they don't want you. And it's like, do I want them? I've dated a few men with a lot of money. I'm not going to say who, but I went on a couple of dates with a man with more than 20 million. Most of the men I've dated have been millionaires. Most of the men I've spent time with have been millionaires. Doesn't matter. What do their hearts look like? And they get mad because, there's some of them that are multimillionaires and you won't sleep with them. And they're like, what, time out. I'm a multimillionaire and this woman won't sleep with me? I don't care how much money you have. I don't care if you're a multimillionaire. I don't care if you got 20 million, 10 million, whatever million. I don't care. It's your shrewdness that's a turnoff. It's your coldness that's a turnoff. It's your heartlessness that's a turnoff. I can't make love to you. Making love, the last word is love. You ain't got no love in you. Why am I making love to somebody who's loveless, who's heartless? I can't make love to you. So he's coming from this mindset that because you're rich, and that was his whole thing. Yeah. Tell these bitches that we don't want them. Tell these bitches they ain't high value. So you're high value because you have a lot of money? Have you ever considered that maybe you're not high value to her because you're incapable of loving her? Because of the coldness of your heart? Because you have an icebox for a heart? How is that high value to a woman? How is that high value when you go home to a cold, shrewd house with a man who's incapable of loving you and showing you compassion? Is that valuable to you as a woman? A man who's incapable of nurturing your heart? That's high value? A man who's incapable of loving you? Who's incapable of showing compassion to you? That's high value to you because he's got some money? To me as a woman, that's not high value. And like I said, I wasn't critical of the man. I was critical of the women who were calling in to get assessed by the man. Like, are you nuts? Do you hear how ruthless this man is? How compassionless this man is? And you're over here trying to get assessed by him? And this is what fuels sexism and misogyny. Not these men, it's you that fuels sexism and misogyny because you play into it as a woman. Because of your values and your priorities, being worldly and being materialistic over your actual heart being fed, over you attracting somebody with compassion and sensitivity and kindness, who's going to help nurture you, who's going to help you heal your wounds, who's going to help you chip away at your trauma and all the things that you've been through and endured. Not some cold man thinking that he's high value because the world says that he is because he's got a couple dollars in his pocket. What's the point of a marriage if there's no love? The lesson that I said with this whole thing of like, oh, you know, and they try to put a spin on it, but this wasn't true, of, you know, rich guys. What I've found, and this is a generalization, is I found usually the more money, the less heart. The more money, the more heartless, usually. But they construct a situation to keep you in poverty. They orchestrate your poverty just so they can exploit you. But then they try to put a spin on it as if you're some gold digger. When the fact is, like, you're actually smarter than them, and you're more capable of them, and you're more able to. You're more business savvy than them. You have every single reason to be successful, but because they want to, it's similar to the infrastructure of white supremacy, where it's like mediocrity bands together to be able to have this kind of social net that prevents them from experiencing what they really deserve, to be assessed and judged for what they bring to the world, which usually isn't very much. But they have each other. That's kind of like the misogynistic, socialist group. A lot of these men aren't really that capable. But it's important for them to feel that they are above you as a woman. This is the very unskillful male ego. They have to put themselves above you, so they orchestrate situations to keep you socially disadvantaged and impoverished. So you will need them, so they can exploit you, so they can use you. And they band together like a cult, because they need that for their mediocrity. And what is their mediocrity? It's not the ability to earn, because some of them are high earning men. It's their inability to do the work. It's their inability to cultivate love in their lives because of their heartlessness. But they believe that their cloak is this idea of being able to earn a living and earn a really decent living, and that way they don't have to do the work on themselves. Because they know in this structure, this misogynistic structure, that them having money is enough. Because of the type of women that you guys were, to call into Kevin Samuelson and get evaluated and be assigned a number from that type of perspective of, I don't have to do any work on myself. I don't have to nurture. I don't have to figure out how to become less heartless. I don't have to figure out how to become less cruel. I don't have to figure out how to become less misogynistic. I don't have to figure out how to chip away at my toxicity. I don't have to figure out any of these things because the world is conducive to me being literally mediocre. And because I got a couple dollars, everybody's willing to just overlook my mediocrity. You think that financial success makes you not mediocre. You think that a certain amount of money in your bank account makes you not mediocre. But your heart sucks. You have no heart. Oh, we've been married for X amount of years. You've been married for X amount of years. Is she happy? Was your marriage thriving? Because there's no way that a man could treat his sister in such a way. There's no way that a man could treat women in such a way. There's no way that a man could be a person who's going to try to pimp a woman, exploit a woman, orchestrate a woman's poverty, not care about how her child eats for their own selfish purposes so they could try to pimp her. And that same man is going to be someone who has such a beautiful, kind heart to their wife. There's just no way. There's just no way. So you're over here saying, yeah, I'm married. I got the ring. You got the ring for who? From who? Some cold, heartless, misogynistic, abusive man who exploits women, who uses women to treat you like a fucking doormat and shit on you all day? And play psychological games on you? And try and gaslight you because that's what they do? There's no way in the world that I believe that you are in a happy marriage based off of knowing the type of man that you're with. I would rather be by myself than be in that type of situation with a heartless man. I don't care how much money he has. Your money isn't your coat. It's not your cloak of being successful. Well, you're a failure at love. You're a failure at kindness. You're a failure at compassion. You're a failure at being able to have any sort of empathy for humanity and mankind. And you want me so desperately to tap into your mindset when your mindset is killing you. Look at the man, died of a heart disease, cardiac arrest, a failure of the heart because of his heartlessness, because of his cruelty. And you're going to the doctor and they're diagnosing you with all kinds of ailments and you can't figure out why you're sick. You're sick because you're sick. So all I say is while I'm healing, because these predators really looked for an opportune time to come and try and attack me while I was trying to mourn from my father's death. Really the only man that I ever knew, the only man really that I can ever say really loved me. The only man who really, really, truly, truthfully, honestly, wholeheartedly loved me. The only true manifestation of love that I really can say that I witnessed as a woman, from the way that he treated me, to how he had my back, to his compassion, his love for mankind, was my father. And you monsters looked at that as an opportune time to attack me. I couldn't even work. My heart was so broken. I was at work, I would just be crying at work, just crying and crying and crying at work for my dad. I was in the streets sitting on the curb talking about dad, 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 crying. And you looked at that as the opportune time to try to attack me. No support, nobody calling me. How you doing, Kenzo? You okay? Nobody. Looking at that as the opportune time to swarm in and attack me. I don't care, kick the bitch out. Really? After she just lost her dad? I, I always got fired. I never resigned from the job. I resigned from this job because I could not work. The workaholic could not work. Too riddled with grief. Too heartbroken. The workaholic couldn't work. And they took that as an opportune time to try to abuse me, to try to use me, to try to exploit me. What do you think will come of that? What kind of karma do you think it will come of that? My spirit is strong, and my father's spirit is very strong, and he's very protective of his daughter. Y'all think that death makes you... No. People in the ancestral realm have even more power than they did on this physical earth. They don't have the boundaries of the human body anymore. So y'all thought that it was going to be an opportune time to try to exploit his daughter. Little did you know, my dad's karma is strong. And he was protective of his daughter while he was alive, and he's definitely protective of his daughter in the ancestral realm. You messed with the wrong one. And so the same level of a lack of compassion that you had when you tried to exploit a situation is there will be no sympathy or no empathy involved when it comes to relinquishing your punishment.